Hey there, drone fans. Rick here again with another review. And today, I have a beautiful Nanuk case for your DJI FPV drone. Now, anytime I buy a new drone, one of the first things I look for is a case to help me protect that drone and also help me keep things organized, because when you buy a drone, there's a lot of stuff you got to bring with you when you head out to fly. There's a controller, there's cables, there's batteries, there's chargers, there's a lot of stuff. And I know you could just throw it all in a backpack and you'll probably be okay, but every now and then I've done that, headed out on site, and I get to the location to fly and I'm missing a cable or I'm missing something else that's critical to put the drone up in the air, and it kind of ruins the whole day. So having a case like this that forces me to organize it, where I know everything that goes in there, there's a spot, and if I have an empty hole right there, I know, hey, I'm missing a battery, let me go find that battery. I like the fact that I can organize it. The protection's important as well, because these are fairly fragile devices, and if you just throw them in a backpack, you could bend a blade, you could scratch the camera, you could do a lot of damage to them. So I like having a case like this. And I know there's a lot of different types of cases on the market, and with the smaller drones that I fly, I'm okay with the softer cases, because I want something light, small, and portable that's really compact. But on these larger drones like this, where there's a lot of extra stuff, I really like to have a hard case that's durable, and again, that has plenty of room for everything. Now, Nanuk's a company that's been around forever. I've got a lot of their cases. I've talked about them on the channel before. I've actually reviewed a couple of their cases, and they're really serious about protecting electronics. So they make a complete line of drone cases for all the drones that you may be flying, but they really got their start in the high-end photographic equipment space and the instrumentation space. So if you're into any kind of high-tech gear, you've probably heard the name before. Now, with the Avata drone, they actually make two versions of this case. This is the 925, which is the larger version. They make a 915, which is a little bit smaller, but the challenge is the 915 doesn't hold as much. Obviously, it's smaller. It also doesn't have a spot for the controller. And I've got both the motion controller and the regular controller, so I wanted a case that could handle that. This case also has room for the larger style goggles. So it's really universal in a lot of ways, and I think it's just perfect for me to carry all my stuff. Now, let me talk a little bit about what makes this case special, because again, there's a lot of cases out there, either soft cases or hard cases. There are a lot of companies that make hard cases as well. So you might be wondering, why'd you go with the Nanuk? Well, for starters, all my cases are Nanuk, which makes it really easy to organize them. You'll notice this one's got an olive green color. That's all my FPV drones. If they're black, that's my standard drones. If they're blue, that's the smaller drones. So I've got all the drones set up on a shelf, and if I'm heading out for an afternoon, I don't have to go downstairs and figure out which case is which. And I know I can throw a label on the case, and I've done that, but just having different colors makes it easier for me. The 915 may be perfect for you if you don't have this controller and you don't have a lot of extra batteries. It's smaller and it's probably a better call, but I like the 925 because I can put everything in there and I've got plenty of extra space. All right, so what separates this from other cases on the market today? Well, for starters, they use a very special, dense cell foam inside of it. Now, the reason that's important is because even though there's foam in other cases, a lot of that foam over time, especially if you're putting a drone in, taking it out, you're moving components through the case, will start to decay and it'll start to flake off. And you'll notice that when you pull out the controller, especially if it's white like this, you'll see little flecks of black on there. That's the actual foam breaking down. The reason I like this case so much is it's a high density foam, a high cell count foam, so it doesn't break down as easy. It's not as soft as some of the foams that are out there. I know a lot of people say, boy, I love a soft foam in my case. Well, I don't like a soft foam. I like a foam that's going to stay together. So they've really nailed it with this one. You're not going to have any problems with that foam flaking off. Another thing I like about it are the latches on the front of the unit. This has a proprietary, I think it's a patented technology called Power Claw latches, which actually hold the case closed and you can't inadvertently pop it open. A lot of the other cases, if you just pull up on the bottom of it, the latch pops open. So I don't know, I just don't like a case that's going to pop open when I drop it. With this one, there's no way it's opening because it's locked like that. You actually have to pull down on the latch and then lift up to release it. So it's a very, very stable latch on the front of the unit, which means it's going to stay closed. I love the fact that it's completely waterproof. So this case, I won't show you this, but you could take the case, throw it in the lake, it's going to float for the most part, and it's not going to let water inside. And that's because they've got a double edge, like a V edge on the top that closes on another ridge on the bottom here. And inside that V, right up in here, there's a nice little rubber gasket that's going to keep all the water out. Matter of fact, it's so good at keeping water out of the case that it's rated for an IP67, which means I'm never going to have to worry about my drone getting damaged. Not that I'm taking the case out in pouring rain, but who knows? It's going to get wet, it's going to get dirty. More importantly, if I take it to the beach, sand gets into everything, and sand is your enemy with a drone because it's going to get inside all of the parts that move and things like that. So knowing I've got egress protection up to IP67 means I'm not going to get sand inside the case. Another big difference is the pressure relief right here on the front. And I know that seems like a small point, but if you're going to take this with you in an airplane, and I travel an awful lot with my drones, this one fits right in the overhead compartment, no issues whatsoever. But when you're in a plane, even though they're atmospherically controlled, there is that ear popping thing when you get up to a certain height. Everybody's a little bit different. But if you've ever had a soda or a bottle of water with you in a plane, you'll notice if you open it at ground level and then take off, it gets smaller, it gets crushed, and then it expands when you're landing again. That's because the pressure inside the plane does change a little bit, and having that automated pressure relief valve in the front means you're not going to have a problem with the case. I used to use other cases that didn't have that pressure relief valve, or it had a manual one where you had to fiddle with it during the flight, and I'd land and the case would be compressed like this, and I would worry that if it pushes too hard inside on the products, I'm going to damage them. This one, you'll have no problems whatsoever to adjust completely. The last thing I'll say about it is it's incredibly durable. And what I mean by that is this case is built to take a lot of abuse. And not that I abuse the case, but if you're going to throw it in the back of your car and you're going to stack stuff on top of it, you know how it goes, right? If you're packing for a vacation, everybody wants their suitcase in there and somebody will come in and stick it on top of your case. This one's not going to give you any problems. It can handle all that extra weight with no issues whatsoever. One last thing I will say that I love about the way they design these is that they're really good at building in tiny little cubbies. They use every bit of available space inside the unit. So underneath these drones, there's places for the blades, there's places for a charger, extra cables. So when you're bringing things along, it allows you to sort of find places to hide all the extra stuff you're gonna bring for that trip. Now I'm gonna take a closer look at in a minute with an overhead shot and show you how everything packs in there, just so you can see where all those little cubbies are, but I like that. And then I guess the very last thing I'll say is that these cases are stackable. So all the cases that I have that are 925 from my Mavic products, for the DJI FPV, and for this product, I can stack those up so they can stack up nice and neat, and they're actually built to stack, which kind of keeps them organized. I know, again, that's a small point, but for me, it just helps me organize all of my flying equipment. Now, if you stay tuned next, what I'll do is take an overhead shot, show you where everything fits inside the case, then I'll come back at the end and remind you of a few things that really separate this product, I think, from a lot of other cases on the market, and I just like the Nanuk product. I think they make a great product. Couple of different colors that you can buy it in. So if you like yellow, caution yellow, or orange, or green like I do for the FPVs, or blue, or red, or whatever you happen to like, you can find a case that matches your style. But for me, just a phenomenal product. So stay tuned. Next, we'll take a closer look, and then I'll come back with a couple of final thoughts. Before I show you where everything fits in the case, I just wanted to point out that when I said before you take a lot of extra stuff with you when you're flying, you can see how many pieces have to fit inside this case. Now, one thing I do want to point out is the cubby sections I was talking about before. You'll notice there's a cutout below where the goggles go. That's a great place to hide things. There's also one over here that you can use for cables or whatever else you'd like. Two up here for the propellers. There's actually one down the bottom here where the charging hub goes that you can put cables into as well. So I really like the fact that they thought that through. So I'll start with the propellers. Those fit down here. And you can hold quite a few propellers in that bottom portion. I also like this here for the cabling. So here's the cable for the goggles. I usually put that down in the bottom right here. And then what's really nice is you could put the drone right on top of that, but that stuff's going to jangle around in the bottom. So what they did was give you an extra piece of foam that fits right in on top of it like that to keep it organized. And that gives you a nice base to put the drone down on, knowing all the stuff below it is protected. You can pull this out with these two fingers right here or either side. Then the drone fits in just like that, slides down inside the case. And again, it's a nice tight fit, so it's not going to rattle around. You can also put it in with a battery in the drone. There are battery spots right here. I use two of those for the Avata batteries. And I use the third one for the batteries for the goggles, which slides in here. And that leaves me another spot right there for another Avata battery or another goggle battery. Here's where the charging hub goes. And again, if you're bringing the charger, there's a space down the bottom for the cables, but that slides in right there. The controller fits here. One thing I do want to point out, you don't have to pull the joysticks off. They've actually cut slots in for that. So that slides down inside there, nice and comfy. There's a spot down the bottom here for extra stuff. I don't really need that. One thing I did want to point out as well is you'll see there's a cutout here if you want to use the larger goggles. So you can pull that out, put the larger goggles in. I'm using the goggles that came with the Avata, so that's perfect. So that basically fold the unit in like that and slide it right down inside there. And that's nice and tight. There's even a spot for the two lenses. If you have these custom lenses cut, they fit in right there, which is nice. And then you've got this extra charger if you want to use that. Now I'm using the hub, but you can slide that down inside there. Then finally, you'll put your motion controller in here. and everything fits in. It's just really, I think, designed incredibly well to protect everything, make sure that it's not going to jockey around inside there. A lot of times with the softer foam, these things bounce around inside there and can cause some issues. With this one, everything fits, and I've still got a couple of hidden spots down the bottom where I can hide things, and if I wanted to, I could actually modify it to cut extra spots in up here, maybe even over here if I decided to do that. But for me, you saw everything that was on the table. It all comfortably fits inside the case with plenty of room for everything. I hope that closer look was helpful. Now here are a few things that I really like about the Nanuk 925 for the DJI Avata drone that you can use to compare it to others you may be considering. First off, I love the durability of this case. This thing is built to take a ton of abuse. Not that you're going to abuse your drone, but if you're throwing it in the back of your car, you're throwing it in an overhead compartment in the airplane, you know how things go. In that overhead compartment, it's like the Wild West. So when you put something up there, I guarantee you somebody's going to show up and try to shove stuff in on top of it. You're not going to have any problems with this case. It's going to fit in there and it's going to retain its shape. I also love the fact that it's waterproof. So it's not just water resistant like a lot of cases are where you can take them out in the rain. This one, you could literally throw it in a lake and the water's not going to get inside of it. And that's because they've got that gasket on the inside and they've got these power claw latches. So it's an IP67 rated case, which means it's not going to get wet. If I take it out in the woods and I drop it down on the ground and dirt gets on it, I can wipe it off. More importantly, if I take it to the beach, that's your biggest enemy. Sand can get inside a lot of those other cases. With this one, you're not going to get sand inside. So it's really designed to do kind of what it's supposed to do to keep the stuff outside the case from getting inside the case. And I like that a lot. A couple other things, the power latch, the power claw latches in the front are important. Again, that's a patented product from these guys. They've really thought through how to keep the case closed. And a lot of the other cases, if you drop them, not that you should, but if you drop them on concrete, they could pop open. I've had cases that I've not paid attention and they've fallen off a shelf in the basement, hit the concrete floor, the lid flaps open and stuff starts falling out. You'll never have that problem with this guy. I love the high density foam as well because I've had cases, again, a lot of times you can go to those big box stores and buy one of those pluck cases or whatever they're called where you get them with a bunch of foam and then you kind of have to pull pieces out of it to create your own little pattern in there. Those things are going to break down in no time. I promise you, after 2 weeks of using a case like that, you're going to have little bits of foam on everything, and that's a nightmare when you're flying something as complex as a drone. With this one, that foam's going to be the same as it is right now for years to come, and I've owned these cases for years. I have some from my original Mavic Pro that I still use that have no issues whatsoever. I like the power relief, or I should say the pressure relief valve on the front. I travel a lot in airplanes, take these on vacations with me, and knowing I don't have to fiddle around with adjusting anything when it's in that overhead compartment is a real blessing. And then the last thing I'll mention are two things. I like the cubbies. I really like the fact that they've built in little secret places where you can hide things inside there. And they're bringing cases, you're bringing extra connectors along. There's plenty of room to hide those inside the case. I like the fact that it's stackable as well because I've got a lot of drones. They're all in the basement. I like them organized, or in the shop. I like them organized. And with these cases, I can stack them up. They're all the same size, and they just look really great when you're out there in the field. So that's pretty much all I had for today. If you're interested in this product, I've got a link below where you can go check it out on Amazon to see if it's something you'd like. They offer it a couple of different colors, like I'd mentioned. You can get it in red, blue, orange. I think this is the olive color. They have a black one, obviously. So you can find a color you like. For me, I like the green for my FPVs. I use the black for my standard drones and the blue for the minis. Just makes it easy for me to tell what drone I've got in the back of the car because I'm getting a little older and I get goofy. Anyway, that's pretty much it for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this clip. And until next time, as always, stay nerdy.